So I'm going to talk about Harris Tweed. I'm going to presume that everybody knows a little bit about Harris Tweed, but not a lot. I'm hoping there's a slideshow here which I'm going to fire through. I think it's important, following two great presentations, both of which I can relate to quite strongly. One of the main reasons I come to events like this is you always learn something. Tonight I've learned quite a lot. Streetwear is really important for us going forward, and you wouldn't think that because, of course, if you think of Harris Tweed, you think stereotypically jackets. It's actually the first anecdote of the evening is probably why Harris Tweed almost went into terminal decline. And that was because they focused entirely on the jacketing market. And in the 1980s, Harris Tweed became pretty much synonymous with badly cut jackets for badly cut Americans. and you can't really get back from that. So what we've actually managed to do in the last 5 years is really diversify into bags, accessories, various others. Digital as well, hugely important. And it's not something that we planned, it's something that we got a hold of very fast, but ASOS is now probably our, I don't give too many stats away, my chief executive hates that, but it's probably our 4th biggest customer. So, always keen to learn, but I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about the nuances of Harris Tweed, how you nurture that brand, essentially how you tell the story, but keep it fresh. Fashion, as Oscar Wilde said, such an awful concept that it has to redefine itself twice a year, and we never want to become victim of that. What we wanted was not for Harris Tweed to be in fashion, because then by definition you're out of fashion the next year. We wanted to be able to adopt, engage with Harris Tweed, and the stage of maybe one line being herringbones, and then the next season being reds, and that's why we wanted to get as much variety across as possible. Anyway, from the land comes the craft, crafting the perfect product. Craft is the DNA of luxury, and design, craft, create would be the themes of what I want to talk about. The neat colours of Harris Tweed, inspired and informed by the landscape. Traditionally, the dyeing process uses lichen and seaweeds, and that to this day remains one of the most important aspects of Harris Tweed. It gives us an immediate advantage. It gives us a selling point, which is not marketing, selling and bling and fancy adverts. It is something tangible, it is something functional. If my company had a little bit more investment, I always think that they could maybe put a little bit of IP into what we do, but I've been saying for years the luxury is in the process, and we've put that out, but unfortunately bigger companies have stolen that tagline, so we'll have to just go back to the basics. It's a unique landscape. That's the west of Lewis, which is the main island in the Hebrides. Almost tundra-like, no trees grow. It's quite barren, but it's very beautiful. It's a unique product. You can see the colours here, very important. The spectrum of blues. About 5 years ago when we first started, there was a big push for Harris Tweed to adopt digital mechanisms, to become much more streamlined. There was a push for us to be CAD referenced. But of course, when you're making a unique product and making unique yarn, the last thing you want to do is become CAD. You want to have your own colourway for computer-aided design to fit around that. So that was a bold move, but it was absolutely the right move. The Orb trademark, certificate trademark, designed in 1909. Coincidentally, it was actually the same year that another famous design was made, so there must have been something very creative, which I'll come on to later in the slideshow. But as you can see, it's really just a stamp to certify that this is genuine Harris Tweed. The 3 tenets of which are that it has to be made on the islands, on the Hebridean Islands, secondly from virgin wool, and third and most importantly at the home of the weaver. And that was because the Hebrides is a beautiful, but it's a barren and remote place. Just to be a fisherman or a crofter is not enough. The land's not good enough. The return of the land is not good enough. So the idea of having a loom in your house to supplement your income was the basis of Harris Tweed. And the authority then went on to obviously certify that, and that finally ended up in the Act of Parliament in 1993, which is really the basis of Harris Tweed's unique intellectual property. It's all pretty self-explanatory there. We'll touch on that as we go through. I think the most important aspect for me, and what I'm trying to get across to designers, which separates Harris Tweed from other machine woven cloths which will be between 40 to 50% cheaper than Harris Tweed, is the last point. that the quality and control is ensured by the hand and the eye rather than the bleep of a computer. Now 10 to 15 years ago, that wouldn't have been that important. Synthetic fabrics wiped out a lot of heritage fabrics in the 80s and 90s, but something beautiful happened between about 2000 and 2005. A lot of people say it coincidentally happened at the time of the crash, where people valued things more and they wanted to step away from bling, and that's certainly true, whether it was coincidence or not. But we benefited greatly from that. Harris Tweed became almost this reference point about style and about provenance and heritage, and we could obviously back that up. A lot of companies, a lot of fashion companies will talk about heritage. It's nonsense. They'll invent heritage. They'll do anything they want to get on that bandwagon. But I always thought that you can't have heritage as a trend. Once heritage comes in, it will never go out, because it's an appreciation of a history, it's an appreciation of a dynamic commitment to artisan skills, and that hopefully for us will mean that Harris Tweed will have a healthy future. Am I the wrong? Is it the top button? Is it?
It's the white.
Side button.
Side, yeah. Button's worn out.
It's not that easy.
Exactly, it's touch of a button, the hand and eye, Yeah, do you want it? It's fine. Skilled artisan, this is our design process where it starts here. This is Ken Kennedy. He's been in the industry for about 50 years, and what he's doing there is he's actually taking the dyed wool. We dye all the wool on the mill, which is very, very important. If you dye the yarn, if you can imagine the yarn's already been spun, you're dyeing the yarn, you're getting the colour held on the outside. If you're dyeing the wool, every single micron of wool is saturated with colour, and that's why we simply can't be beaten on colour. That before I came into the industry, all these small elements of the process were just taken as being part of the process, but it was quite obvious to me from the start that these became real selling points that had never been touched upon. So Ken will take 2 pinks and you'll see 5 pinks in between. He's a real master craftsman. The process itself, that's in the finishing department. That's the machine called the cropper. It's essentially just going to take the finished tweed once it's back from the weaver, and it's going to put it through almost like a lawnmower and just take the rough hairs off the edge of it. This is the start of the show. This is the Hattersley loom, which is a single width loom that was made around about 1919, and that did the industry all the way through until about the late 1970s, where the double width loom came in. This is Norman Mackenzie, who is an ex-dentist, and he's a very, very proficient weaver. Harris Tweed is not silk or cashmere. There's a symbiotic relationship between the weavers and the landscape and the cloth. Designers is inspired by the colour, the intricate craft and soul. From wool to yarn through tweed, it's continual addition of skills and craft. I think it's really important that we actually reclaim this term luxury. For too long it becomes synonymous with glam, with money. For me, luxury is about the intricacy of the process. That's where the value is added. It's not just on some fancy marketing scheme. Craft a genuine story. As you can see here, on the left, you've got the lichen of a loch in west of Lewis. The fabric, we code all our fabrics. Some designers get a bit frustrated. I think it's slightly unromantic that we give it a code, but that's YC140. And on the right, that is a jacket from the Topman NEN collection, which I think probably was from 2011. Now, I took a bit of a risk about 2010. I felt that we had to get beyond Savile Row, we had to get beyond the 500 £500 jacket tailors and really designers. I wanted to make Harris Tweed much more mainstream, but without losing the quality. And Topman for me were always the company that I admired most. They're very professional about it. They would go to all the graduate fashion shows and look at some of the most talented graduates, and whereas Vivienne Westwood or Paul Smith would pay them £5,000, £10,000 a year, they would pay them 3 times that. They were smart about it, but they were also design led, so therefore it was the right collaboration to do, right partnership to unfold. So in 2011, that was the Topman Jacket. That went on show at the Covent Garden Opera House. the journalists loved it, and they called it Rust through some of the printed versions and online versions of the reaction to the show. And then Rust then went to be one of the key colours for that season. So that proved the point that we actually could inform fashion. We could be proactive in the whole fashion rather than just be reactive and somebody saying that red's in this year or tartan's in and following it. So it really worked out to our advantage. Get excited there. Partnerships. We don't have a huge budget at Harris Tweed. Ultimately, the industry, it's like an inverted pyramid, and the most important element is at the bottom of that pyramid, which is 140 weavers. Those 140 weavers are essentially the most important component. So it can't actually get much bigger than the amount of weavers you have. We want to grow that, but we want to grow that in a sensitive manner, because we don't want boom and bust. We don't want to ship in huge amounts of weavers from elsewhere and set them up in crofts all over the islands. It could be a bit of a socio-economic disaster. But what we want is to grow it healthily, and very important is the partnerships that we have. So the designers that we engage with, the design houses that come to purchase Harris Tweed, but also diversification. And Johnny Walker Black Label came to us with an idea of designing a tweed that represented the whisky. It's not the most beautiful tweed, to be quite honest. I said that from the start, but you had the red for the rich fruits. You had the turquoise for the not so rich fruits. I can't honestly remember what the turquoise was for. The black was obviously from the peat. It's quite a strong peaty element. I think quite a lot of Talisker, or one of the Isle of Skye distilleries goes into Johnny Walker. But it actually worked, and I'm saying to my ex-lecturer who's in the audience as well earlier, it just became a phenomenon because we had this story which Diageo tried to keep, literally tried to put it in a bottle, only have it for 3 or 4 markets, but we put a little, how might you say, surreptitious press release out locally, and then it just grew. And it grew because it was a great story, because what happened was they had taken the tweed and they'd infused it with these scents of the whisky. It was actually a perfumerist in London that had developed the perfume. But that then became this phenomenon, because of course there was a joke element of, why would I want my tweed to smell like whisky, because it smelled like you'd been down the pub. But then once people got the intricacies of the sort of tech spec development behind it, which we'd worked with Harriet Watt, then it actually stood as a really quite a good story, and a lot of the fashion press got a hold of it as well. And we paid approximately nothing for the story, which was probably, if you get some marketing genius bean counter, they would have made it probably into 7 figures. Just stepping back a little bit, when we didn't ever want to rebrand. I think rebrand's quite a little bit of a toxic term, because it implies that there was something wrong with your product in the first place. But we had to update, and we didn't want to alienate. We wanted to do that sensitively. So we engaged with Scottish designers. The suit I'm wearing, which is still as good as what it was made 7 or 8 years ago, with Derek Walker. There was a really talented Scottish designer, ahead of his time. Was doing the whole blue-black thing about 5 years before the High Street was doing it. And one of the other designers was Joyce Payton, who's a wonderful couturier from South Queensferry, just outside Edinburgh. And again, beautiful bodice or corsetry with a hat, and simply we just put Harris Tweet Hebrides, not just for Miss Marple. Design, craft, create. Our biggest market is Japan. I used to live in Japan and learned a lot about marketing, about branding, about how you sell, and I always thought, well, Scottish whisky can do so well here, and there's an appetite and an understanding, then there's no reason why Harris Tweed can't. And that's never left me. That appreciation for heritage, appreciation for craft, appreciation for design, but also appreciation for just the fact that it's not just the fact that it's Scottish, but it's something different, and you've got a story to back it up. It's authentic, and Scotch whisky sells on that, and Harris Tweed now sell on that as well. A heritage and a future driven and maintained by the essence of craft and design, and the orb stamp is there, and it's only given to the cloths with a perfect finish. More updated, we are unfortunately or fortunately we're part of the style industry, There's fashions that will come and will go, but we're always open to doing something different. And the higher up we get the chain, the more influential they become. I mean, this wonderful fashion industry that we're part of, it's very complex. It's tons of magpieing going on. The magpieing gets faster, it gets more frenetic, it gets more dynamic. You know, what Julie touched on actually could be really, really significant for what happens at Harris Tweed, because if these big companies like Burberry who've made announcements, I think Marc Jacobs and a few others, that they're going to sell straight off the back of the catwalk, that will change the whole thing, because all of a sudden you won't have this 6 months wait from fashion show to purchase. And that will mean that we at the moment, our cycle starts in September, where we show in Paris, and that is for the following season. Well, that would change, because we would probably then do our showing in January, and then the companies would have 4 to 6 months to then get the product development right, to get all the samples right, and then to make the major order and put it through. So it could be good for us, but also could be a little bit bad as well, because at the moment this is a really busy time because all the big orders are coming in, and we're out to about 15-16 week lead time, and that's because it's hand woven. So, you know, we worked with a company called Lardini last year. Now, if you buy a Burberry jacket, or if you buy a Paul Smith jacket and it said made in Italy, it's made by Lardini. And they simply just couldn't get their head around the fact that our lead times were 14 weeks. It was just madness for them. And we explained about the weaving. We then had to send a letter out to all of their clients to say that this is a hand woven product. The hand weaving takes 4. I mean, they liked the idea it was hand woven, but they didn't actually understand it. So it had to be explained. Anyway, Xenia were fine. They were amazing. They've got this incredible creative director called Stefano Pallotti. He's an environmentalist, and it almost kind of got a guilt factor of working in the fashion industry. So what he did is he bought the Harris Tweed. Some of it he put out as it is on the left. This jacket on the right, he shredded some plastic that they took from part of the recycling. So they shredded that at great cost. They then put it into a form of a yarn. Developed a form of needle punching, which I'm no textile expert, but which is essentially really just a way of inserting that yarn, that plastic yarn, over the top of the Harris Tweed. The Harris Tweed then goes from being water resistant to water repellent, and that jacket on the right was selling for €3,800 and doing something good for the environment. Collaboration is probably the most overused term in fashion. We prefer partnerships, because I think collaboration is a bit transient. It's a bit, oh yes, we're going to do this for a specific purpose. Partnerships, a bit more deeper, a bit more meaningful. Nigel Caborn, for example, who is one of our best clients, he'll do partnerships because he believes in them, he believes in that commitment. He'll run them for 3 or 4 seasons, and we like that as well. This was probably one of our most popular partnerships. Just wish it could have lasted a little bit longer. I don't know if you know much about Converse. I think Converse online is still the most successful brand. It's got about 50 million Facebook followers. It's absolutely huge. They sell so much direct off their social media. It's incredible. And it's a one-dimensional product. I've got a friend who works for Jack Purcell, and he said that Jack Purcell, Converse clothing, all the rest of it, accounts for 0.5% of the turnover. That one shoe, in all its different forms, accounts for 99.5% of their massive turnover. It's an incredible brand. And just for me, I'm a great believer that some things just can't get better. Like, if you take a 747 jet, designed in sort of 1962 or thereabouts, it's a much more beautiful jet than the A380, in my opinion. It's not really that much better. Adidas made their Copa Mundial and their World Cup boot mid-70s. Do football boots look better than that now? I don't think so. Converse All-Star, another. You can't beat it. So what they do is a little bit like us. They rely on, just retelling the story, keep the core product the same, but partnership, branding, collaborations, and people just love these boots. I don't have mine on with a huge fashion show on Monday in London, so they're down there, or otherwise I would have brought them. But quite simply, 1 times 1 equals 3. The sum of the parts is exceeded by the final product, by everything that's engaged with. And those Converse, they actually last. It's a bit of a problem. That was Converse Japan, who I think is a license, but is now they've a huge fallout with the core Converse, which means the core Converse don't want to use us. Politics. I know that I'm probably running out of time here, is that right?
No, it's
yeah.
fine.
But I'll just say a few more words about where we are as a brand now, which is at the apex. If somebody can tell me a better fashion brand than Chanel, then tell me. There probably isn't. It's a standalone, it's not part of one of the three big groups, which is Richemont, LVMH, and Kering, the Gucci group. They stand alone, they're a very dark and wonderful organisation with a very dark and wonderful leader in Mr. Lagerfeld. He is a big fan of all things Scottish, so much so that he advised Chanel to buy the Barry Mill down in the Borders, which is wonderful in one sense, but a little bit sad in another, because the Scottish textile industry outside of Harris Tweed and maybe Johnson's really struggling. Anyway, the Barry Mill has been bought over by Chanel because it makes a fantastic cashmere. We're lucky that they came in, they bought our product. You see this jacket on the right. Just a classic, it's a classic dog's tooth. It's not very good quality picture of that, I'm sorry. But it's a classic dog's tooth pattern. Really popular jacket. It actually sold a lot as well, so it wasn't just purely for PR. I think I've seen that jacket on the back of a few stars. Pharrell Williams' wife has worn it several times. It was retailing, well, I won't tell you, the skirt on the left. The skirt on the left is actually a really good story, because I'm a big fan of supporting Glasgow and all the young brands, streetwear brands. There's a brand, Track Bags. It's a friend Alex started up 5 or 6 years ago. Majority of companies like that will go under. Alex now sort of 4 or 5 years in, doing really good. It's made down in SWG3 warehouse in York Hill, and they've reached I think they've reached the apex. People are talking about them. But Alex used that tweed for his bags about 5 years ago. So if you go online, you can probably still buy that bag, which then become this iconic Chanel skirt. Exact same tweed, because we don't do exclusive. But this is Alex track bag, which will last you a lifetime, and you could take up to the top of Mount Everest probably. It costs maybe about £300. Great value. The Chanel skirt on the left is €1,500. So, I know where my investment would be. And again, the jacket on the right, I think, is about €4,000 as well. Just our marketing, our branding, what we're trying to do, we never want to stay still. I think if you start to plateau as a brand, then you're pretty much going backwards. So we'll sometimes do photo shoots or help out with other photographers, etc., and we'll try and plant seeds. So before the Defender obviously stopped production a few months ago, we did that last year just in the hope that we might tweak their interest. It never quite came, but we still love to work with Land Rover or Aston Martin. So I get really excited there. Power of Provenance, that was the Ryder Cup collection, which was done through Walker Slater, through in Edinburgh. It was commissioned, designed, we had to match up with their livery, but again, just a really nice project to be involved with. Great golfing heritage here in Scotland, and people did used to go around golf courses, swinging clubs wearing tweed jackets, not dissimilar to the one that I have on tonight. So we managed to do that. It was very, very popular, sold out, and it's really helped another Scottish company, Walker Slater, to get their brand on an international scale as well. And last but not least is a Japanese garden. Why is a Japanese garden? Well, you may ask. For me, Japanese gardens were designed for poets. The whole gardening philosophy there was very different to that of the West. It was about walking around, it was about taking in the beauty. And for me, they really are perfection. They were perfect 300 years ago, they're perfect now, and they'll be perfect in 300 years' time. And for me, that is hopefully what Harris Tweed will be too. Thank you.